Hello, I'm Trey and welcome to another of my colouring tutorials. This is part 4 of this tutorial working on Nice Little Town 4 and by Tanya Bogema Stolova. I do hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. So on the other parts of this tutorial, I worked on the roof, the main part of the building and some of the pipe work and such like. Today I'm going to be looking at the windows, the frames and the glass, and if possible get to the little bit of the stonework. I decided to use the Castle Art pencils for the windows in similar shades to that I've done the roof in, but because I'm using Castle Art there'll be slightly different tones to the Marco Refine. I find that quite useful if I'm using a limited palette, because each pencil set I have, the tones aren't quite the same, so you can make it look different. So I'm going to put the lighter shade down first, even if it's in shadow first, just to get a base layer down. I always tend to do a light pressure so I can get a few, layers down. If you hear any noises in the background, that's because I've got the windows open today. It's too warm to be shutting the windows, suffocating the heat, so hopefully it won't be too disturbing. I'll now put a medium orange down, and I'm starting to highlight the shaded areas. I'm going to be using the shading that's already on this design first, for the first few layers, just to see how that works and if I need to extend it. Now I'm going to put the darkest layer down. This window here didn't have any shading on, so I have included a little bit of shading, which I think, where I think there'll be some shadow. This part of the roof I think would create a shadow, and of course the flower a little bit. I think most of that will be in shadow. underneath here, because of the lintel, I think they call them, above it. And I think these parts in here, I'm going to put a little bit of dark orange on those. Just add an hint of colour. Just going to go around the edges, the rest of the window on this little bit of the door, with the darkest orange I'm using. Now this window here at the top, most of that is going to be in shadow on that side, so I'm going to extend the darker bits. Now it will need a bit, obviously a few more layers. I'll put about 3 layers on each, for each colour, which is what I generally do, and see how that works out. I'll do that and then I'll come back to this and have a look, see how it's looking. I put 1 more layer of each of those colours down, so that's another, so that makes it 4 layers now. And I'm going to try and do a light blend with my blender pencil. These pencils tend to blend quite nicely, so it should work. I also decided to colour those, the bell and the door handle, in the same colour. So I've done the light blend. I'll be able to put some more layers down. Just smooth it out a little bit at this stage. Yeah, so that light blend has worked quite well. These pencils work really nice blending. Now I'm going to put another layer down for each of those colours. I'll start with my darkest and extend the edges of the shaded areas that I've chosen. I'm working on what's already there, but just extend it a little bit. Now at this point, this is my 5th layer that's going down, and I tend to possibly do 6 layers, 7 tops. That's just my choice. And of course, if you do more layers, it's going to look better. I mean, for people who do, double that what I do, my work probably doesn't look really finished. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but probably doesn't look very finished. But that's down to budget for me, really, because I want my pencils to last a little bit longer. So that's why I choose to do that. I'm happy with the effects I get. But if anybody's, that's watching this, if you don't feel the layers that I do is enough for you, go for it, go for more. This is just, an idea of what I do, which I hope some people find useful. I suddenly realised there, after I finished using that last pencil, that actually that was my medium pencil, my medium orange that I was using for the windows. And so I extended the shading with that medium pencil. When I'm not using a contrasting colour to shade, I don't always pick up that I've picked up the right pencil to do the darkest parts of the shading. So the shading in this project is going to be more subtle than I would normally do, because I quite often use a contrasting colour to darken things down. Whereas this time I'm just using a slightly darker shade of orange, so it's not so easy to pick up where the very dark sections are. Well, there's nothing wrong with going very dark, and there's nothing wrong with not going quite so dark. It's just a slightly different technique to get a slightly different effect. So now I'm going around the edges of the shading with the darkest orange that I'm actually using on this project for the windows. Now I've put the darkest ones down, I'm going to put another layer of the lightest orange and see how it's working out. Now this textured card will take more layers to cover. However, because the pencils I'm using blend quite well, I can get away with slightly less layers I would normally do for this kind of card. I mean, I had to use more layers for the Marco Refine pencils, but with these Castle, because they're quite vibrant and they blend really well, I can get away with 1 or 2 less layers. And I'm still only using very light pressure. I'm not leaning on at all, pressure-wise. Now I'm going to do another blend with my blender pencil. I'm going to lean on just a little bit harder, not massively so, just say medium pressure. Now that works quite nicely. These pencils are lovely with that blender pencil, and the blender pencils I use is the Koh-i-Noor polycolour ones. I find they work really well if I'm using pigmented pencils. I struggle a little bit with the, the other student grades, but with the such as Castle Art and Prismacolor, they work really nice with those. So I'm happy. I mean, the tone of orange is more vibrant than the roof, so it kind of makes a nice contrast. It stands out enough. So I'm pleased I've done that. So now I'm going for the windows, as in the glass. I'll do the curtains in a different colour, but the glass. And so I tend to stick to a couple of colours when I do glass, because I'm not overly great at glass. It's either yellow for a warm effect or blue. And because I've gone for a warmish palette, I'm going for yellow for the windows, and I'm going to use the Marco Refine because they're more subtle shades, so it'll fit in nicely, I think, with windows. I'm going to cover lightly the whole window in the lightest yellow I'm using, because there's some shading in these windows, so I'll just use that. I always get a little bit confused about shading with glass. It's something I need a bit more practice on. Now this one, it's in a lot of shade, but I'll still put a base layer on of the palest yellow. I'm also going to use the yellow for this glass in the door. I'm going to highlight part of the pattern in the lightest yellow, and I'll do the back of that in the darker yellow. I'm just going to be using a couple of shades of yellow on the windows. I tend to keep them quite subtle, so I'm going to do the darkest area with like a medium yellow, but it's a bit of a contrast between the very lightest one. And with this window, there's a lot more shadow, so I'm going to do most of it in the darker yellow I'm using. With this window here, I'm just going to put the shading in around the curtain area and in the corners. And same with this one as well, just kind of around the curtains. Right, that's the first two layers. It needs some more layers for those colours, which I'll do, and come back to this. Now I'll put two more layers down, one of the lightest and one of the darkest yellow I'm using. I'm going to put another one down because I think because of kind of light colours I'll need another one for before I blend. When I was looking at this, some of these windows, I decided I wanted more of a gradient effect. So say for instance for this one, I've done the darkest yellow in the shaded areas, but when I came to use my lightest yellow, I'm not going right across all of the window again, I'm just going 3/4 of the way across, and I'm kind of hoping it'll give it more of a gradient effect, so an effect with reflection of the glass possibly. This window is all in the shade, so I wouldn't do that with that one, but the rest of them I'm trying to do that. So in the middle of these windows where I'm not going over again, it's just like a hint of colour because it's got cream there already with the card being cream. This window is all over colour because it's in the dark in shade. Now I'll try a blend on this and see how these pencils are working. See if there's enough colour down. blending towards the lighter sections, so it will transfer some more colour that way into the middle. I think that's worked quite well. I don't want to put any more layers down because I want to try and keep the windows subtle. So now I'm going to look at the stonework. I decided to do the stonework and the water that's in this barrel in blue, but the blues I'm using are a macro refined, so there'll be a slightly different tone to the Castle Art blue that I use in the main of the building. And again, it's just a nice effect to look different even though it's the same colour. Just put the first layer down in the lightest blue I'm using, and I'll sort out any extra shading after I've done the first few layers. Well, this little bit of shading around the edge of the building at the bottom, I'm going to do that in blue as well, just to give an hint of possibly stonework, stone path, something like that, but just a little bit. I'll go around these, I'll do those in a different shade, those like flower type patterns. Okay, we'll go around those. And the water. It's a very light shade, you probably won't be able to see it very well on camera, but it'll darken in as I do the layers. Medium blue, and with the water I'm just going to be coming around from the edges, a little bit of shading. And then I'm going to use mostly the shading that's already there for the stonework. Now this area here I think will be darker because the roof will put a shadow over the top of it, so I'm going to put quite a bit of shading in here, a light layer for now. I'm going to go around these stones with a bit of shading, just around the edges. It'll stand out a little bit more from the back. I'm going to put a little bit of shadow on the edge of that stone section to give the impression of the bending downwards, moving downwards. So see if that works. And then add shaded areas to these. Shading that's already there for the ground. Now I use my darkest blue and go along the edges where I think it'll be the darkest. Now I'm going to go back to these stones. I put one layer of light all over the stones. So now I'm going to go into the shadowed section with my medium blue first. Go over all of the shadow section. I'm still using light pressure. It's going to need a few more layers, but it's just to get an idea where my light and dark sections are. And now I'll use my darkest blue and try and highlight the edging of those shadowed sections and the stones. I've decided not to go around the stones in the darkest blue. I want a little bit of a different effect for the stones and the back section. Now that needs a few more layers, so I will do that and then come back to this. I'll put one layer down for each of those colours, 3 colours I'm using, the light, the medium and the dark blue. I'm not quite sure if it's enough to do a medium blend, but I'm going to try, well, a light blend. I'm going to try anyway, so it works. The Marco Refine aren't quite as pigmented as the Castle pencils, and this is quite textured card, so I'm probably going to need more layers. Let's smooth it out a little bit. Yes, it's definitely going to need more layers. There's not enough colour on there to do the blend. So I'll put down another 2 layers for each of those colours and see how that works. I put 2 more layers down of those, each of those blues. The Marco Refine does need more layers to work with this blender pencil, so I'll try another blend. Also probably because it's on quite textured card as well. It's working a bit better now. Right, that's another light layer of blending layer. Now, I think the darkest colours I've used are the blue in this section for the stone. It's worked okay. The lightest blue I'm using is very light, and so it's almost like it's just a tint on the cream card. So I'm just going to do one more of the light layer of blue. I mean, also at this point I'm starting to struggle to get any more layers down. With the Marco Refine, I kind of struggle when it gets to 6 layers. I'm going in different directions on this section, bigger section here of the stonework. I've been doing that with the other layers as well to fill in some of the texture on the card. And there we are. The shading is kind of subtle, and it's also the end of this tutorial. The whole project is turned out to be a lot more subtle in the shading than I would normally do, and that's because I'm not using contrast and colours to do the darker sections. So it's turned out to be quite delicate looking, even though it's vibrant colours. So I hope people have found this tutorial useful and helpful. Any tips? If you have any comments, please do leave them. It'd be interesting to read them. And as I said, this is the last of this part of this tutorial, and when I come back next time I'll be looking at the foliage and the washing on this project. So bye for now, and I'll see you in the near future.